This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. See the reviews, see what stands out, and see if BetterHelp is right for you. Visit betterhelp.com/super. That's betterhelp.com/super. Did Ned actually remember Peter at the end of Spider-Man Brand New Day? Hey, brother! Put some sort of spoilers warning flashing here. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers! Guys, at long last, I have seen Spider-Man Brand New Day, and oh man, did I love it. Like, who'd have thought, that I'd connect so deeply with a movie about the epidemic of modern male loneliness, right? Punisher and Spider-Man are funny together. Mother.
Go home!
Seriously though, if you haven't seen it, do. But when you do, just know that you're going to be wondering one very important question. Did Ned actually remember Peter in the final moments of the movie? Because, as I said, the real ending of the movie isn't actually a supervillain or anything. It's loneliness and the never-ending struggle Peter Parker has with being Spider-Man, and what Peter must give up in his personal life for the greater good that Spider-Man can offer the world.
Who is Spider-Man? He's a criminal, that's who he is. A vigilante.
And also Milchek from Severance, he's also the villain.
Choreography and merriment!
Now, until now in the MCU, Peter has actually been coping with this pretty well, thanks to, his close-knit group of friends, namely Ned and MJ, and his wider circle of superpowered friends. But at the end of No Way Home, Peter is forced to make a terrible decision in order to save everyone by asking Doctor Strange to cast a spell that will make everyone on Earth forget who Peter Parker is. And this marks the height of the division between Peter, the high school student, and Spider-Man, the superhero. The issue is that there is no more Peter to go back to at all. Like, all the things that made him Peter, Aunt May, Ned, MJ, school, even the Avengers are just gone. They don't remember him anymore. All he has left is Spider-Man.
Well, bye, someone.
And this emotional division is so stark that his body literally starts evolving away from its more human side and more into the spider side of him. And it's also this battle that makes Brand New Day just so compelling. I mean, it's not a villain you can punch, and as Peter gets more powerful, it's hard to concoct an opponent fitting for the streets of New York City. And as such, the ultimate question as we exit the theater isn't whether or not the big bad has been taken down, but if Peter managed to take both of these halves and put them back together. Which, spoilers, he does, and in doing so finally summons the courage to reintroduce himself to Ned in the final moments of the movie, but how that interaction goes down is left unknown. And it has left all of us wondering, did Ned actually remember Peter? Today, we find out.
Spider-Man! He doesn't want to be famous? And I'll make him infamous!
Spider-Man!
I think we gotta put a J. Jonah Jameson in there.
Okay, so here's how the scene in question goes. Peter spots Ned at a coffee shop and after a moment of hesitation decides to finally go reintroduce himself. Hi. I'm Peter. And Ned looks up at him in total confusion, wondering why this stranger named Peter is just introducing himself out of the blue. But then Peter tries again, this time performing the duo's secret handshake, which, to Ned's surprise, he already seems to know.
Remember, rest it, roll it, and punch it!
The handshake finishes, and a sudden moment of realization comes over him, and he excitedly looks up, exclaiming, "Peter!" And then we roll credits. And it sounds pretty straightforward, right? Like, yeah, he totally remembers. Hooray, friendship is stronger than magic, woohoo!
Nice.
Adorable, guys, but MJ would barf. But no, it's not that simple, because earlier in the movie, when Peter was hanging out with MJ and Ned, whilst still in costume and just having a grand old time playing Legos and chatting about what it's like to be Spider-Man.
Can you summon an army of spiders? No, Ned.
The climax decides that it's time to rear its ugly head, so Spider-Man has to jump into action, and as he jumps out the window to go save the day, MJ yells, "Be careful, Peter!" To which Ned says, "Spider-Man's name is Peter?"
Excellent reenactments.
Thank you. I know you guys are really enjoying these reenactments because we don't have any movie clips available to us yet, so, I would just like to give myself a hand. And this moment sets up the massive confusion at the end because now we all have to wonder, after they do the handshake, is Ned realizing that this Peter stranger Is Spider-Man the guy that hung out with the other day? Like, is he just connecting those dots? Or is he actually remembering his old friend Peter Parker and all the adventures they've been on together so far?
It's been an honor, Spider-Man.
And it's a very difficult question to answer because you very badly just want the answer to be that Ned fully remembers everything because good Lord, does Peter need a friend, besides Frank, but also Ned has spent the last 4 years wondering who Spider-Man is so he can thank him. Like, he even has a full-on, beautiful mind board in his bedroom with all of his research.
Every day, Pepe's mail's getting sent back to me. Pepe Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia. I look in the mail. Well, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia.
He built an app, for goodness sake. Which in the post-credits, do you guys think that means there's a second Spider-Man coming or that our Spider-Man is going to space?
Should have stayed on the bus.
Also not for nothing, on his little beautiful mind board there's a clipping of a Puerto Rican parkour phenomenon as a potential Spider-Man that Ned has identified. And I am just hoping beyond hope that was a nod to Miles Morales on the horizon. But I guess we'll see.
I don't want those weapons in this neighborhood. I got a nephew who live here.
Tell you what though, on that note, they totally got me with Detective DeWolf and the whole, what are my kids' names bit? Well, for starters, your son's name is Poppy. But then later she calls him EJ, which I can only assume at this point is just short for Silent E. Miles Morales Jr. You can't slide one past me, Marvel. Point is, Ned finally discovering Spider-Man's identity could easily warrant the same reaction. But the real underlying hope, more than that Peter gets his friend back, is that if Ned does remember Peter fully, then it means there are cracks in the spell cast by Doctor Strange that can be exploited, loopholes they can search for so that not only can Peter get Ned back, but maybe MJ too.
He's a little weird. I'm MJ.
You two don't know each other?
A hope that earlier in the movie seems all but lost after MJ finally reads the letter Peter has been neglecting to read her for 4 years, and she tells him that she can see why that version of her would have loved him, but she is not that girl and does not love him. I haven't actually pulled the knife out of that wound yet, so I'm just still suffering from that moment. But also, can I just say that this marks, weirdly, the second time in a Marvel movie that a guy named Peter is rejected by a new version of the woman he loved who now has different memories? 2 nickels, am I right?
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
But the good news for our Ned remembers everything argument is that Ned has a few other things going for him in the memory department besides just that final moment. I mean, for one, when the 3 of them are hanging out, Ned is able to guess with about 95% accuracy exactly how Spidey's web shooters work and what the webbing must be made of. Well, there's obviously some sort of shear thinning fluid that is cycling within a chamber, right? So it can keep its liquid form. Is it obvious, Ned? Because I know you went to MIT, but so did a lot of other people, and they don't all seem to just intricately know how these highly advanced superhero devices work, okay?
Do you guys just put the word quantum in front of everything?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Scott. That said, Ned did know how the web shooters worked prior to the spell, so is that just some memory leaking over? Not to mention, as we said, Spider-Man is still clearly really important to Ned. You could argue it's because he and MJ still remember the few times when Spider-Man saved them in high school and, all over the place in Europe and stuff.
Night Monkey! Night Monkey, help!
Night Monkey.
Save us!
What?
And yet, when Jean is possessing MJ, which by the way, Jean Grey, what? When Jean is possessing MJ, she uses all of that logic to connect the dots really fast in a way that makes sense to Peter, saying that she and he must have been more than friends or classmates because one save, sure, but multiple saves? And why always her? And again now?
I'm sorry, but you're in danger. You just have to trust me.
Fine.
It's the exact line of reasoning you want to make sense for MJ. And yet, when MJ finally gets to meet Spider-Man for herself, not under the control of Jean, she does not connect those dots at all, or at least not out loud to Peter or for us, the audience. So that sounds bad. But then again, she does also admit to being too withholding in her relationships, or at least admit she's been accused of being too withholding in relationships. So maybe that's what's happening here. She's just withholding. oh, they have set this up so well. I mean, I guess, yes, whilst possessing MJ, Jean does say, wow, there is really nothing of you in here. So that also sounds bad. But again, Jean is trying to be as mean as possible in the moment. So maybe she's just lying to serve her own purpose. Now, the caveat here is that later on, when MJ tells Peter what it was like being possessed, she says she remembers nothing, just going out the window and then being on the street. That's why it was so freaky. And when she tells him that, Peter has this sudden realization that Metzger was lying to him and races off, to go correct his mistake, which distracts you, the audience, from noticing the other revelation here, which is that MJ remembers going out the window. Okay, did you catch that? Because that means that Jean didn't possess her until she left the room. Meaning, when Spider-Man shows up and tells her to trust him and that she's in danger and she decides to go with him, that's all the real MJ.
You just have to trust me.
Fine.
Not Jean just putting on an act. Meaning that MJ's immediate instinct is to trust him. Which, agreed, it's not like a lot to go on, but it is the only time in the movie we get to see her interact with Spider-Man without time to reflect on the situation. It's all just instinct. And to me, that points to some kind of lingering memory. It's like a muscle memory trust exercise, which is kind of what the handshake thing is. I feel like that's like muscle memory, and Ned's like, what is happening here? But I'll admit, it's still a bit of a swirling cloud around MJ at best. But getting back to Ned, he may actually have something else that distinguishes him from MJ in this situation, which is that back in No Way Home, it's revealed that Ned is capable of magic similar to that of Wong and Doctor Strange, like full-on producing portals and stuff. Present day Ned in Brand New Day seems to have no idea about this, although maybe he should, because is there any reason for him to have forgotten he can do magic along with forgetting that Peter existed? Either way, though, it is a Doctor Strange style spell that erases Peter from everyone's memory. So perhaps that very Doctor Strange style magic that Ned is capable of also protected his memory in some way, or else is capable of undoing it if needed. But here's where things get fun, because Ned and MJ are not the only two characters we need to consider in order to answer this question. We also need to take a look at the Hulk.
If you see me with this stuff, run.
Okay, so earlier in the movie, Peter sneaks into Bruce's class to try and learn about his inhibitor chip that Peter is later able to recreate, and which I'm sure we've not seen the end of in terms of taking people's powers away, which is one of my least favorite superhero tropes, but I digress. Just guaranteed it ends up being used against our heroes for some money-hungry villain to seize power, but then the heroes make a better one because they're smart and they use it to ruin the bad guy's plans. It's first grade SpongeBob. Anyway, during the meeting, Bruce deduces that Peter is not one of his students.
You're not one of my students, are you?
Also has no memory of Peter at all, just like everyone else, which, fair enough, that's how the spell works. But then later on, Jean takes over the Hulk to try and break her sister Sarah out of damage control, but is apparently unwilling or unable to go full Hulk and unleash his full power, instead opting for the more middle-of-the-road Hulk we see in Endgame, who's more half Hulk and half Banner.
Best of both worlds.
As ever, though, it's Chekhov's Hulk, and control will be lost, and so it is. And then the real deal, not so halfway, Big Boy Hulk comes out to play, and even states out loud, "No Banner, just Hulk." Guys, am I on fire today or what? But the Banner Hulk distinction here is really important, because while Peter does a good job keeping the Hulk at bay, it is obviously just a matter of time before Hulk ends the fight. Until that is, Peter's mask comes off and his identity is revealed, and Peter even tells him, "It's me, it's Peter, we're friends." At which point, Hulk seems to just realize something and surrenders the fight? What gives? Well, our theory is that Doctor Strange's spell only erased Peter's identity from Bruce, not Hulk.
I know you're in there, Banner. I'll get you out.
Which is why it takes the full transformation for him to be recognized by Hulk. But then, yes, you might be wondering, well, if he recognizes him, why does he fight Spider-Man at all? Isn't he his ally? And like, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but he's the Hulk. And a lot of times after he transforms, doesn't really care who's on what side, you know? That is so reliable that it is literally part of Loki's plans in the first Avengers movie.
That's your play.
What?
Loki means to unleash the Hulk.
But that's not to say he can't come to recognize others. I mean, he works with Thor a lot in Ragnarok. Natasha is able to calm him down, and he'll even take orders from Cap.
And Hulk.
Smash.
So then the question becomes, did Hulk or Bruce ever actually know ahead of time that Peter was Spider-Man to begin with? Because they don't actually cross over very much until this movie. The first time is in Infinity War, where Peter does show up to help fight Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian, and Bruce is there, but at that point, he doesn't know Peter and does not see him unmasked, and then Peter gets whisked away by the giant donut and doesn't reappear on Earth until the final battle against Thanos.
And then he started doing the yellow sparkly thing that he does all the time.
And of course, at that battle, Hulk is again present, but you know, he's kind of busy fighting. However, they are both present at Tony's funeral, and the Avengers do so much recon work when they're like planning out the Infinity Stones and go over all of the lost heroes that it is pretty likely he knew who Peter was anyway. Plus, Peter himself declares them as friends mid-fight, which is part of why Hulk lets him go. Which then, of course, begs the question, does Peter's face trigger the memory of capital H Hulk, or does his face just break Hulk's facade and get all the way through to Banner? And which of those is true, I think has very interesting repercussions, but either way, one of them has to be true, which means that almost without a doubt, there are loopholes in Doctor Strange's spell that can be taken advantage of. Thus, to answer our original question, yes, I do think Ned fully recognizes Peter as his old best friend and not just as the identity of Spider-Man at the end of the movie. Which is of vital importance because if Ned can do it, so can MJ. Okay, here's one. Captain Marvel shows up to Spider-Man in the battle against Thanos, and he's like, I'm Peter Parker. And she's like, hi, Peter Parker, you got something for me? But then she leaves before that spell happens. So did the spell affect her? Would she still remember Peter Parker? And then Miss Marvel and Spectrum are all body swapping with Captain Marvel in the Marvels, which I know you did not see, but that's what's happening. So like, could they know? But guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to leave a like on it if you haven't already, and subscribe so you don't miss any future Spider-Man action from us. If you would like to see what Spider-Man has to do with the American flag, you can check out this video right over here. But otherwise, Ben, until next time, I will see you in another life.